Cardinal Pell's appeal is being expedited by Australia's Supreme Court. His conviction has sparked many questions about how a second jury reached a guilty verdict when the first jury could not. Joining us now to dig into some of the controversy surrounding the case is Crux Editor John Allen. John, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. John, what are the biggest problems, John, with the Pell case and his conviction? You've reported that senior Vatican officials are not convinced of his guilt.
That's right, and it's not just senior Vatican officials. I mean, there are plenty of leading Catholic personalities, and for that matter, non-Catholic in Australia, that share that skepticism. I think the problems are really twofold. One has to do with the evidence that was presented at trial. To believe that George Pell was guilty of sexually abusing these two altar boys in the 1990s in the cathedral in Melbourne, you would have to believe that a fully vested archbishop at the end of the main Sunday Mass, and it's a very busy cathedral in downtown Melbourne, split off from the final procession of the Mass on his own, unaccompanied by any aides, which essentially never happens, found the sacristy completely empty, except for these altar boys, which also essentially never happens, and was able to perform a sexual act while fully vested, wearing an alb, a cincture, and a stole, which, if you know anything about those vestments, is just kind of implausible. And so that certainly has given rise to some doubt. In addition, there's also the question of just the climate of public opinion in Australia. Even Justice Peter Kidd, who sentenced Cardinal Pell to his 6 years in prison, referred to what he called a witch hunt or lynch mob mentality surrounding this case. A lot of people believe that created an environment in which it was very difficult for Cardinal Pell to get a fair trial. I'm quite confident, Liz, these are the sorts of issues that his legal team will be raising during that June 5th and 6th appeal hearing.
Now, Cardinal Pell's first trial last August ended in a hung jury. Reportedly, many were ready to acquit. Now, in the retrial, the jury voted a unanimous conviction. What do you make of that?
Well, what I make of it is that this evidence is ambivalent. I think on the one hand, you have an abuse victim, or at least someone who is describing himself as an abuse victim, who comes across as extremely sympathetic and someone who has clearly been scarred by this experience. On the other hand, you have facts that have been alleged that are just very difficult to square with common sense, certainly for anybody who knows what life is like in a major Catholic cathedral on a Sunday. And I think the first jury probably focused a little bit more on the evidence. The second, perhaps a little bit more on the victim and the obvious, understandable desire to do justice to victims of abuse.
John, before I let you go, I have to get your insight on this. Cardinal Pell could have stayed in the Vatican, not returned to Australia for trial. He had Vatican citizenship, a Vatican diplomatic passport. Why would he go back?
Well, first of all, this wasn't just Cardinal Pell. I mean, for instance, Cardinal Philippe Barbarin, who was recently sentenced to a suspended jail term in France for covering up a charge of sexual abuse, could also have invoked diplomatic immunity. I think in both cases, Cardinal Pell and Cardinal Barbarin did not do that for two reasons. One, it is not consistent with the new policy of the Catholic Church in the wake of the clerical abuse scandals that the Church is supposed to be cooperating with civil authorities in the countries where these offenses take place. The other is that I think both Cardinal Pell and Cardinal Barbarin are profoundly convinced that they are innocent and wanted to have the opportunity to clear their names. Both are appealing their convictions, and so, Liz, in both cases, I would say the last word on these sagas has not yet been spoken.
John Allen, perfect last word from you. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
You're welcome.